Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Necrons. We're doing another faction focus video today. Today we're going to be looking at the Tau Empire, looking through the article from the Warhammer community as we've been doing through all the previous articles. We're looking at their army rule, detachment rule, any observations and hopefully some weaknesses so that when Necrons go up against them we can smash them. So guys, before getting in, remember to subscribe to the channel. It's not long now before 10th edition does drop and I want you to be ready. So hit the notification bell as well, so that once we start doing full unit reviews and tactics, you will be ready. So, Tau Empire, army rule for the greater good. So, long story short, because there is a bit of a paragraph or so to read there. The Tau Empire ability is a little bit weird, but you effectively you pair units up in the shooting phase. You've got one which is an observer unit, and one which is a guided unit. And you put them into pairs. Now, if the unit is battle shocked, or of course if they're fallen back, they're not going to be eligible to be a guided unit unless there's some sort of stratagem that still allows them to fall back and fire perhaps, but we've not seen that yet, of course. So you've got an observer unit, you've got a guided unit. The observer unit is literally the eyes, and the guided unit is the ones that are going to be shooting. And effectively, if they use the guided unit to shoot at the unit that the observer can also see, then that guided unit is going to get a +1 to the ballistic skill. And if the observer unit has got the marker-like keyword, then they also ignore cover. However, if they do not target the observed unit, so our units, if they don't target the unit that they've spotted, if you like, then it's going to be a -1 to their ballistic skill. Now, looking at the Pathfinders, which is further down in the article, they have now got a 5+ ballistic skill, whereas previously they were a 4+, so they've had a bit of a nerf. I mean, they've only shown that one data sheet, I believe. But then again, further down, they've got the railgun with ballistic skill 4+. So I don't know whether it's just the Pathfinders, whether it's just the infantry, or what. But potentially they can get that to a 4+ ballistic skill if you were to, say, use the Pathfinders as an example there. So what you can expect from a Tau player is, well, they're going to have a small min unit, which will be the observer unit, the one that's going to be looking out for our Necron units. And then there'll be a larger unit, which will be the guided unit, the unit that's actually going to fire or focus fire on our units. So that's the way they're going to play. And in fact, the small min unit is going to have the marker lights, most likely, so they also ignore cover. It's not the be all and end all, but they will likely have the marker lights. Now, thankfully, the way marker lights worked in 9th edition is no longer a thing anymore. It simply just ignores cover. So yeah, good thing that that's gone, because we didn't like that. But there are weaknesses to for the greater good ability. First of all, we know that there's going to be lots of minimum units to be observer units. That's the best way for them to be more efficient with their points. There's no point having a large observer unit that won't be taking advantage of the +1 to the ballistic skill. They may as well put it into a smaller unit and have a larger unit to actually fire with a +1. So you kind of know what they're going to do. So if we can take out those smaller units, that will be beneficial to us. Also, we know that they have to focus fire and not split fire. Now, unfortunately, we are Necrons, and reanimation protocols, that's actually our weakness. If they focus fire on a unit, we're less likely to be using reanimation protocols elsewhere. So unfortunately, that's not going to work too well with us. We'd rather they did split fire, like they did in 9th edition, but they're not going to, because if they target a different unit, it's going to be a -1 to their ballistic skill, isn't it? So the likelihood is they are going to focus fire, and they're going to be doing it from range, of course. They're a ranged army, so we're going to have to be making use of cover, making use of our melee units, getting into a fight to get hold of these units that are firing at us. Of course, if we do get melee units into their grounds, we want to be taking on the big units. With those kind of units, with our melee units, so Scorbic Destroyers, Ophidian Destroyers, Flayed Ones, they need to be targeting their big stuff. Whereas at range, we really need to be targeting the small units, the observer units, so that they're less efficient elsewhere. But also there was another little note here that if they are battle shocked, then they cannot be a guided unit. So if we do have a method of actually battle shocking enemy units, there will be some sort of unit that can do that. We've already seen it in some other of the previous articles. If there's a method of doing it, then targeting the large unit and forcing them to take a battle shock test with a leadership likely being a 7+, they may actually fail it and not be able to be a guided unit in the first place. So that's a little bit of observation, weaknesses, pros and cons of the army rule for the greater good. Now, the detachment rule, this only applies to the 3rd battle round onwards, and all ranged weapons will have the sustain hits 1 ability, and if they have a guided unit, which you've just mentioned how the guided units work, then they'll get sustain hits 2. So critical hits or hit rolls of a 6 will inflict more hits. Sustain hits 1 is an additional hit. Sustain hits 2 is 2 additional hits effectively. So the likelihood is they are going to be bunkering down quite early in the game. Turn 1, turn 2, expect them to be behind obscuring terrain, having a screen defense in, a defense line so that their bigger stuff hasn't been touched before turn 3 begins. Because once turn 3 begins and their 6s start exploding, that's when the damage really happens. So you could also expect Tau to be using reserves, whether it's Deep Strike, whether it's Strategic Reserves, whatever reserve they've got in their codex or in their index, they're going to be making use of that. So while they are off the battlefield, or while they are trying to be very defensive in turns 1 and turns 2, we need to be rushing forward. Again, melee units against Tau, against a shooty faction, we need to rush them. We're not going to outgun Tau, especially with our Doomsday Arc with the damage 4. I mean, I'm looking at the railgun here. It's D6 plus 6 damage with strength 20. Nothing we've got really compares to that. I mean, maybe we're relying on Catan shards. We haven't really seen anything with those yet. In fact, we saw the Void Dragon, didn't we? We saw the Void Dragon's abilities. I think we're going to struggle in terms of damage in 10th edition, to be honest with you. Looking at all of these articles, everyone seems to have really high strength, hit really high damage, and we just don't seem to compete on that front. Other observations from this article. Let's have a look at my notes. Drones. Drones are no longer models, so they're not going to be shielding their units and taking off damage. There was nothing worse than doing sort of 6 damage to one of the battle suits and then they take all 6 of it on a single drone. There was nothing worse than seeing that. Now that's not a thing anymore because the drones are simply just buffing abilities for the unit. Now there's one in particular I want to focus on today, which is the Guardian drone, and any range attacks made against the bearer's unit, you subtract 1 from the wound roll. Now bearing in mind monsters and vehicles in particular have been bumped up in toughness, so it's already going to be much harder to wound those kind of models unless we've got the high strength weaponry, which we possibly will be lacking. And then a -1 to that roll as well. I mean, even if we had a strength 20 weapon, which I don't think we do, we might do, I don't know, and it was going up against a toughness, a toughness 11 monster or vehicle from the Tau army, that would normally wound on a 3+ because it's not double. This will take it down to a 4+, so it would almost be like them having a toughness of 20 going up against our strength 20, doesn't it? So it's a massive change in terms of that dice roll. Now all the other drones seem to be quite standard. I mean, the gun drone has got twin links, yep, whatever. You can add marker lights to a unit using the marker drones, but yeah, nothing really of note. You can also add a wound with a shield drone. Whatever, right? It's not as good as it used to be with a shield drone. But yeah, going full circle here, for the greater good, you kind of know what to expect, so go for the minimum units to get rid of the observers so that they're less efficient with their actual guided units, because they're going to have to be using one of the bigger units to be the guided unit, if that makes sense. And as for the detachment rule, yeah, you kind of know what to expect, so that's a weakness in itself. Turn 3 is when they get very, I don't want to say punchy, because that's not what they are, they're shooty, aren't they? Turn 3 is when they get nasty. So if you can catch them early, that's probably the best thing to do against Tau. So guys, that is it from me today. I will catch you tomorrow with the next video, which I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'll have to have a look on the list. But thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.